those like engraved rocks or engraved products? Shirley? MedTech, okay. Oh, nice. Self-publishing in and of itself is a talent. Sculptures, art, garden stones. Oh, good. Okay, that's what I thought. Digital art, surface pattern design, art licensing. Okay.
Okay, well, it is noon. I'm respecting everybody's schedule. We're going to get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar on business planning. This program is being presented on behalf of all of the chapters in the Massachusetts Rhode Island district of SCORE. My name is Jim Danhauser. I'm a volunteer mentor with the Cape Cod and Islands chapter of SCORE. And I wanted to cover just a couple of introductory things before turning things over to our facilitator for today, my friend and colleague, Mark Goldberg. For those of you who may not be familiar with SCORE, we're a fully volunteer nonprofit organization and a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. We've been pursuing this work since our founding in 1964 by offering educational opportunities like this webinar and by providing mentoring assistance to people who are in business or who are thinking about starting a business. Each chapter in our Massachusetts Rhode Island district has a significant number of volunteer mentors and subject matter experts, people with a broad array of different business experiences and expertise, all of whom are ready to provide mentoring assistance to you. And we have the ability to connect throughout the nationwide SCORE system to over 10,000 volunteers. So we should be able to cover the needs of virtually every client. Importantly, all of the SCORE mentoring is absolutely free and completely confidential. So if you already have a mentor, we suggest it's a good idea to reach out for an update. If you don't and would like to get started, well, we would encourage you to do that. How? Well, you see listed here the websites of the various chapters in the district. You would go to the website of the chapter that covers your geographic area, click on the Find a Mentor tab, and get started. If you'd like, you could also enter your name, geographic location, and email address in the chat, and I will get that information to the appropriate chapter so that we can get it started for you. And if you have other topics that you think would be interesting for us to conduct a webinar on, you might enter that information into the chat as well. Just a couple of rules for today. We ask that you use the Q&A on Zoom to ask questions. I'll keep track of those questions as they come in and pose them to Mark as and when that's appropriate. I'd ask that you use chat only if you have a specific comment that you'd like to make. It's simply easier for me to keep track of questions that are coming in one feature, as opposed to having to toggle back and forth between the two. The webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link to the recording to everybody who registered for the session in the next couple of days as soon as it's available. Our facilitator for today is my friend and colleague, Mark Goldberg. He is a certified SCORE mentor with the Cape Cod and Islands chapter of SCORE. He's a very experienced and accomplished business executive, and we're very lucky that he has agreed to lead our session today. And with that, I'll turn things over to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And if you give me 1 second. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So today what we're going to be talking about is business planning. Most of the time when we talk to a new client and we say, one of the things that you're going to need is a business plan, their eyes roll back into their head and they glaze over and don't hear anything else that we talk about, because their opinion of business planning is what they've heard, and that it's onerous and it's something that you don't really want to get involved in. Well, what I want to do is show you a simple way to plan your business. Now, one of the things I want you to also think about is some of you are already in business. This is a simple way to plan the expansion of your business, because you can look at a different variety of opportunities that are available to you and plan them through this very simple and straightforward approach. Many years ago, I went to a seminar conducted by Peter Johnson out in California. And those of us that conduct webinars and seminars always like to say that you want to take away just one thing. If you do, then it was a successful event. Well, Peter Johnson left me with this thought, and that is accuracy before momentum. And so that means what you want to do is really think through everything you're going to do before you actually try and do it. Accuracy before momentum can be termed in another way, and that is crawl, walk, run. So what we want to do is think in terms of crawling first, then picking up some momentum and walking, and then running. And if we do that, then we're going to have a better chance of having complete control over our activities in our business. So what are some of the thoughts that you have relative to a business plan? Why do you even think about a business plan? Well, business planning does a couple of things. Number one, it's a great way to communicate. It's a great way to communicate to your team and let them know what you're thinking. Because if they understand what your objectives are, they understand what your messaging is, they understand how you want to go from point A to point B, then they're going to be able to execute the plan much better. Secondly, it's a great way to communicate with your investors. Many of you will start your business by bootstrapping, just as we did. We started our business in 1985 and we bootstrapped it. We funded it out of savings. And after a year, we were able to pay that back to ourselves and moved on. Others have family, friends, or even professional investors. And having a business plan is a great way to communicate with them so that they understand what it is that you are doing and how you're doing it, because they will have greater confidence in what it is that you are doing. And thirdly, to your bank, you want to have a steady stream of communications with your bank, whether you have a loan with them or not, because at some point in time, you may need them to address increasing the size of your business, buying more capital equipment. And if they're familiar with your business, they understand where you're going and how you're going to get there, then they're in a better position to act more quickly to your needs. And it's also a guide. One of the things somebody told me many years ago, and it may have been in business school, that if you set an objective, then you have to have a metric. So when you set an objective for yourself of increasing sales by 10 percentage points this year, you need to have a metric so you can determine whether you actually did it or not. If you have an objective of increasing your business into a new geographical location, then you need to have a metric. So a business plan allows you to measure your performance, so you know whether the strategies and tactics you applied actually work or not. And it's a great way for you to manage your business. We used to get our business plan out once a quarter, review it to see if the assumptions we made still hold true. Do the environmental factors that apply to our business still hold true? Do the objectives that we set at the beginning of the year still have the ability to be executed? So a business plan helps you with that, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a voluminous plan. Now, when I worked for Westinghouse in the 70s, our planning period started in July. We finished it in September. We presented in October. We rewrote it as a result of our executives' input. We represented it in November. We put it on the shelf and started over again next summer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a plan that allows you to answer the questions. Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there? And when you think about it, it's all about strategies and tactics. Now, I don't want to get into a semantics discussion, but strategies are what you're going to do, and tactics are how you're going to do them. And most of the time, people go from objectives to tactics. But you want to think about, where do you want to go, and what strategies will you use to get there, and how will you execute the strategies? So the length of a plan is only as long as it's essential to communicate your message to your audiences, your employees, your investors, your banker. And it's a living instrument. The beauty of the business model canvas is you don't have to go back and rewrite 30 pages. You can line out an assumption you made on a targeted client and add another one if in fact the one that you thought would work did not work and was not validated during the process. And we're going to talk about validation as we go through today. Now, if you have to write a full business plan because you need financing, and most lenders require a full business plan, we recommend you go to SEED, Southeast Economic Development Corporation, and go to their website, and you will find an excellent template. Why is it excellent? It's unlike others because what it does is it asks you questions to answer in each of the elements of the business plan. So you go to resources and you see business plan booklet, and you click on it, and it will guide you through the full business planning process. And then you'll have cash flow templates, profit and loss statements, templates, and business planning workshops that they hold. But these are the first three. You'll be able to use the cash flow template and the profit and loss statement template for the business model canvas concept we're talking about, and I'll show you where. Okay, so what is the business model canvas? The business model canvas is a tactical tool to help you brainstorm your business or the expansion of your business. And what it does is it helps you detail the operating elements of your business so you know how to deal with them as you move forward. And it's a framework. If in fact you have to do a full business plan, then you can use this as a framework to get started. Now, this was created by Alexander Osterwalder in Europe, and you can find out all kinds of information on their website. If you desire to get into more detail, I actually have an 89-page PDF that I'd be glad to send to you that gives you the complete background and understanding of how to apply this concept. But today, our SCORE chapter utilizes the business model canvas as the first line of business planning, because it's easy, because it's convenient, because it's not threatening. Now, when you see the business model canvas, you'll see it's broken down into 9 blocks. On the right are blocks that deal with the customer and how you interact with them. On the left is the operations side. At the bottom is the economics. And we're going to go through each block and give you some examples so you can see how it works. Now, normally I can see the chat button, but I can't see it. So Jim may have to help me with this. The 9 blocks were filled out by a company. Their value proposition, that is, what are they offering? The need, want, or desire that they are fulfilling is a platform to connect riders and drivers. Anybody have an idea who this is? Easiest way around. Anytime, anywhere, anytime.
Well, the first guess is Uber.
Absolutely. How simple was that? This means this plan, thank you, Jim, this plan is understandable. But when you go through the entire plan, you can see how their thought process of what they're offering, who they're offering it to, how they expect to reach people, what their relationship is, and what are their activities, their resources and sponsorship and partners. All right, so let's get into the detail. The first thing we want to think about is value proposition. Now, this is not the headstones or the flags or the permanent memorabilia. This is what it is that you are offering in the way of a value that can be termed a need, want, or desire. Or what problem are you solving? So what you want to think in terms of is when you make the offer to them, what need, want, or desire are you solving? The need, want, or desire is what you're doing. You're delivering it through your products and services. So what you want to think about is what's really compelling about what you're offering. What differentiates it? Remember, people buy out of differentiation. When you think about your customers, you have to ask, what are needs, wants, or desires do they have? And we're going to talk about the gain and the value that you're creating because your customers have pains. And what you're offering them is value that makes it a gain. So what you have to do is think about those customers and what are the problems they're facing? What are the needs do they have? I make it very simple. I have a yard and I have landscaping issues. Every night I come out and there are holes in my lawn. I think some kind of rodent or some kind of animal is coming and digging holes in my lawn. And it really upsets me because I had the whole lawn aerated and reseeded last fall. So I need somebody who can address this problem, that understands what is happening and how can I rid whatever is visiting my lawn in the middle of the night when I'm not up. So you got to ask yourself, what need are you satisfying? And when you do that, then you got to look at that differentiation because that becomes your competitive advantage. Now, this sounds like marketing lingo, but you need to think about this as you go forward because there are lots of other competitors out there offering very similar products or services as you are. And realizing that today, every customer that you're trying to get is having that need, want, or desire fulfilled by somebody now. So how are you going to replace them? Now, in the chat box, I identified that my wife and I owned a trade show marketing company for almost 30 years. We would always be asked, what differentiates you from the 5 other competitors from whom I can choose to get my training and measurement undertaken? And we would always say our differentiator is we are marketing based, which that means that we consider trade shows and events a marketing tool. And therefore we create our training programs based on marketing. And that became our competitive advantage because a competitive advantage is when you are positioned in the mind of a buyer where they see no suitable substitute for you. The bakery that we have on, you might have a specialty. We have a bakery down the road from us on Route 28, and their specialty is French pastry, croissants, chocolate croissants. And they're different from the muffin shop that's near us. That's their competitive advantage because every time I think of chocolate croissants for my wife, I think of this bakery. But when I think of a muffin, I think of Wolfie's. So what you want to do is think in terms of what differentiates you and what becomes your competitive advantage. And this is all in the very beginning of your planning. So it's not what you do, it's more about the need, want, or desire that you are satisfying. So here's your customer on the right, and the customer has jobs to do. They have pains. Our customers who were trade show and event managers had pains because they were not getting as many leads as they needed or wanted. They were not reaching as many people walking down the aisle as they needed or wanted. So we provided pain relievers in the way of our products and services. We did live training, we did exercises, we did all kinds of customized programs to help their staff understand how to reach customers more effectively and communicate. And that became a gain for our customer because we met the need, want, or desire that was a pain. So you need to think in terms of when you are thinking about your value proposition, what is it that you are offering? Now, let's take a look at another business. Most of you probably use Waze, W-A-Z-E. Their value proposition for the drivers is it beats traffic. I'm driving down Route 6 and all of a sudden pops up 10-minute delay, exit on exit 3, whatever exit 3 number is now. It navigates any place. One time we had to go visit a customer in New Jersey and we plugged in their address and it left, right, left, and we were in their driveway. I looked at my wife and I said, I have no idea where we are, but we got here. It provides you warnings, police ahead. And it provides satisfaction because you get where you want to go when you want to get there. You can actually, I tell them what time you want to get to exit 3, Quaker Meeting House Road, and the Council of Aging, and they'll tell you when I have to leave. It also helps me find attractions. And the advertisers are also be looked at because it's relevant to the drivers. So you want to think about, this is nothing about the app. This is the value proposition. This is what they're offering. But who are they offering it to? Who is the customer segment? So what you want to do is you want to identify each of your customer segments and define them. Now, we had 2 levels of customer segments at the exhibiting company and 1 level at the convention level and 1 at the exposition level. So we had exhibit managers, we had vice presidents of sales and marketing or business owners, and they had very specific different definitions. And I'll just talk about each one of those. The exhibit managers wanted performance improvements from their staff. The sales and marketing or the owners wanted reduced investment, more product improvement, productivity improvement, and they wanted sales. So we had to look at each one of these segments to determine if our value proposition met their needs, wants, or desires. Now, when we think about it, we need to ask, who are our customers and how do they think, feel, do? How do they make purchases? Do they make purchases on quality, reliability, reputation, price? Do they look at the content of what you're offering? What will make them buy? So you need to think in terms of understand what are the hot buttons that your customers utilize to determine whether they're going to buy or not. And even more so if you're new, if they're going to change or not. They've been using one supplier for the last 10 years. Why should they change? And then look at the demographics. If you're Cape-based, are you willing to go to the South Shore? I'm working with a woman right now who's starting a business, and she is saying she will go New Hampshire and Massachusetts, both. She's going to start on the Cape, get her business going, understand what's going on relative to the ups and downs, ins and outs, and then expand to New Hampshire and all of Massachusetts. Is there an age group? Are there demographics that you need to understand? Are there environmental impact factors that are necessary for you to understand? So you need to understand whether people will buy online, or they only will buy in person, or will they buy both? When you do that, then what you're able to do is customize your value proposition to meet the specific needs of each of your customer segments, because there are a variety of customer segments. So in summary, what you need to think about is your value proposition, and have you clearly identified the targets that will buy your needs, wants, or desires. So let's look at Waze. Their customer segments are geographic, they're drivers who become part of a community, and they're roadside businesses. You can find a Dunkin' Donut any place in the world on Waze. So what you want to do is think in terms of who are you trying to reach? And those of you who say we're trying to reach everybody, know that that's not right on the surface. Targeted marketing works best. The third block you want to think about is channels. Now, some of you may look at this as sales channels, but I prefer to look at this first as channels of information. When you take a look at each one of your segments, you need to ask your customers, how do they get their information? Where do they go to get information for themselves and for their business? And then you need to be there. You need to understand, how do you communicate with them so they know you're there? Because awareness is the number one issue. And getting people's attention in this over-communicated environment we're in is even more difficult than it ever has been before. Marketing communications people says it takes 7 times for you to communicate with somebody before they even begin to internalize who you are. And so getting their attention means being where they are. Now, I get my information first and foremost from the Cape Cod Times first thing in the morning. Very first thing I do after I get up, get my cup of coffee, is I go online to the Cape Cod Times, because they can never seem to find my driveway. So I went digital. I belong to several groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I mostly get my business information from LinkedIn. And I belong to groups, so I participate in discussions. And for some of you, it's very important to become knowledge leaders. So you need to know where your customers go to get their information. Now, don't forget that traditional channels are also very important today. People like to get postcards. People like to get mail. And if you have a topic that is of their interest, they're going to open up that letter and they're going to take a look at that postcard and take an action. So you got to ask yourself, how do you reach them? And remember that marketing communications are integrated. So everything that you say in a postcard, you have to say the same message in an email so that they can connect the messages from the different channels. So when you think about where they get their information, the only way you're going to know is ask them. So you need to look at and test the value proposition to see if, in fact, does it reach them? Do they understand it? Is it really working to communicate your offer? So what you want to do is think in terms of reaching out. Now, Waze does it by word of mouth. I'll tell you, the way I learned was I was on my way to a customer with one of our associates, and I had a map out. And she said to me, "Are you kidding me?" She pulled an app out on her phone, dialed in the address, and we went the rest of the way using her phone. And that's how I learned about it. And the app is free and it's fully featured. Periodically, they update it, so you have to update it. And the advertisers come to them. They don't really have to reach out. So they have to just make sure that people know that they're out there. So when we think about these 3 blocks, value proposition, customer segments, and channels. I want you to think about these 3 blocks at the moment. You need to stop in your planning process because you need to validate your assumptions. I'm a veteran. I went through initial training at Fort Dix. Sergeant Woodman, I remember him very clearly, the very first day said, the definition of an assumption, it makes an ass out of you and me. So what you want to do is you want to think about value proposition, customer segments, and channels. These are assumptions at this point that you have made about how your product or service will relate to the marketplace. So you need to go out and validate them now. I have a client right now that is making dog leashes, and he went out and validated his customer segments because he thought that dog walkers would be a great target market. But after validating, he found that most dog walkers get the leashes from their customers, and that's the leash the dog would like to have because they're familiar with it. So he lined out dog walkers. So you need to validate it. Now, who do you validate it with? Not your friends and family, because they're going to give you the answer that they think you want. You need to find people that are defined in your customer segments and talk to them about the value proposition you have for the products and services you're offering. Make sure that you have fully defined them, and then make sure that the channels that you have assumed that they are on, they really do use. You assume they're on Facebook, and maybe they don't. Maybe they don't use Facebook. They only use LinkedIn. They don't use Instagram. I know a lot of people are using Instagram today, but they don't use it. So you're not going to reach them that way. Do they like to get mail? Do they read the paper and look at the ads? Now I read the paper every day. I never look at the ads. My wife will say, did you see the ad for that? No, I didn't see it. I just read the articles. So you need to understand how your customers get their information.
Mark, we have a question.
Okay.
How do you suggest that people, in fact, get that information?
Well, I'm working with a woman right now we're starting a dental consulting practice. And what she did was she found 7 dentist offices that she does not work with or has never worked with, and is going to go get an appointment before or after hours and sit down with the dental practitioner and talk to him or her about her value propositions, the definition of her customers, so the size of the dental practice, et cetera, and where do they get their information. Does that help?
Yeah, I think in that example it does. I guess, is there something more generic? Do you recommend people try to do a survey?
Yeah. I think you can do a survey. However, the response rate on surveys is like 4 to 5%. So you're going to have to have a pretty big population. What I would do is do it person to person, or on the phone. And what you're trying to do is validate what your thoughts are. They're your thoughts. They're your assumptions. So if you can identify a half a dozen targeted customers and you can do a phone appointment, a Zoom appointment, probably a Zoom appointment, great, because you can see their visual reactions to your questions.
Okay.
Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So the next block you want to think about is the relationship you want with your customer. How does this relationship go? So the question is acquisition, retention, and growing your customers. When you acquire a customer, is it one-off? Do they buy something and leave and you don't see them again? Or do you they acquire something and then you have follow-up? And how do you retain them? Do you use a loyalty program? Do you do a follow-up call with them so that you determine what the next action would be? And how do you grow the number of customers you have? So what you want to think about is what's the relationships and how do you work it to create this extension. Now, I'll give you some examples. Acquiring customers. Our number one tactic for acquiring customers was utilize trade shows. So we used to go to 3 trade shows a year, and we gave seminars at the trade shows. And our objective was not only deliver information, but let them know that we were at the exhibit and they should come see us to talk more about their needs, wants, or desires. How do we retain them once we had a contract? Then what we do is call them afterwards. We would send them a thank you note to thank you for their business. We would call them afterwards to talk about the next event that they had in their calendar. And we grew customers by word of mouth. And after a while, we actually stopped advertising, except at our national events. And what we did is we got referrals. And how do you get referrals? You ask for referrals. You reward them for referring you. So you need to think in terms of how does your entire system of acquiring, retaining, and growing customers work, and how are you related to them? Now, some of you will have relations through distributors. Some of you will have relations by selling direct. So you need to understand what it is that you have in the way of the connection with customers so that you can communicate your value proposition and continue to communicate it over time. Now, how does Waze do it? Well, they have a casual user with the free app. They probably know that I'm tuning into it this afternoon because I'm going to the Council of Aging in Sandwich, but do they keep track of it? I probably do, but I'm not sure. I don't get anything from them that lets me know that. They don't send me messages. Community support by game mechanics. So what they do is they have relationships with the game mechanics, and the advertisers finding out what they expect from the users. So what you want to do is you want to think in terms of what's the relationship and how do you want to continue the relationship. Okay.
Mark,
Yes.
just one other thing. One of the attendees has made a suggestion back to that question of market research and how you do it. I've seen quite a few Facebook groups post market research polls where you can customize the poll and people in the group would answer as if they were looking for your product or service, or more general things like how do they find information, what search engines do they use, et cetera.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. I'll have to look at that. That's great. If you come back and do this the next time, I'll have that in this. That's a great idea.
Thanks, Kendall.
Okay. So if you take a look at the right side, that's who your activities with the outside world. The left is the inside world. So the next thing you want to do is you want to list every single thing that you do in order to execute the activities of your business. And when you do this, then what you want to do is the activities will provide you with the competitive advantages. So what is it that you do that creates a competitive advantage? For example, the leash guy, he has a unique attachment tool that nobody else offers. So you want to think in those terms. The dental consultant has a survey, an audit that they do in advance of any kind of discussion so that they come to the first meeting with an understanding of what the buyer feels their needs, wants, or desires are, so they can have a timely and productive meeting. So what you want to do is list every single activity that you offer that it takes to make your offer. Now, some of you will list marketing. You'll be your own marketer. You do your own sales. Some will list distribution, delivery, follow-up. So follow-up is part of sales. And some of you will be manufacturing something, creating something. The people that are designing and selling lifetime and memorabilia are manufacturing products. So what you want to do is you want to list every single activity that you are involved in that makes your business work. Now, when you do this, what you're going to find, like Waze, is that they look for new markets, and they have R&D and software all the time. They have selling to advertisers, and they're constantly curating data and communities. So what you want to think about is all the activities, because the next 2 blocks will feed from this activities. So when you think in terms of your activities, some of them you will be able to do yourself. Some of them will be supplied by partners. I'll give you an example. I am very linear. Those of people who know me, like Jim, know that I'm very linear. I take notes, Roman numeral 1, AB, Roman numeral 2, AB. I'm not that creative. I write down my ideas and have somebody else do the creation. For 27 years, I had a creative partner who partnered with us to do all our collateral material. When we first started in 1985, there was no PowerPoint. We used slides. We had a slide partner. So you have to understand, you look at who can be your partners. So when you think in terms of partners, some of partners are your bank, especially if you have a loan. Some partners are your suppliers. Those are people that provide you with the products that you use. If you're making memorabilia from rocks, you're going to have a rock supplier. And that rock supplier may also provide you with a line of credit. And if you're shipping throughout the Northeast, you're going to need transport suppliers. So what you want to think about is they may be shippers. So some of them are strategic alliances. We had strategic partners. For example, another one of our customer segments were trade show and event builders, the people who built the exhibits. Because when they built an exhibit, the very first thing they would say to their client is, maybe you need some training of your staff in order to use this exhibit, because it's a tool. So we strategically aligned ourselves with several exhibit builders who felt that this offering would be of value to their clients. Some of them we had joint ventures with, where every time they bid a new build, we were part of the offering. So what you want to think about is who are going to be your partners, and then who are going to be your resources. Now, Waze had big advertising gas chains as their partners and community leaders as their partners. I remember one time we went through Tupelo, Mississippi, and on Waze, it popped up and told us all about the birthplace of Elvis Presley. They got that through the community leaders as their partners. So your partners could be your suppliers. They're key resources. They're people that have a key interest in the success of your business because it feeds business to them. Now, the other side of that are resources. And these resources are activities that help you get your job done. So they may be financial resources. They may be physical plant or logistics kind of resources. They may be intellectual property resources. So you got to ask yourself, what do you specifically need to do? Because your resources are into 4 basic categories. They're in human, financial, physical, and intellectual. Now, in human, we look at knowledge. You need people on your staff that have specific knowledge and skills and abilities, but they also bring talents to you that you need in order to make your business model work. Financial could be in startup funding, which is very difficult to get other than from independents. Sometimes you can get it through lenders, commercial lenders. You may need operating capital, or you may need money for R&D or growth and expansion. I had a client a number of years ago that had a business that made plant-based animal treats, mostly dogs and cats. They needed to expand their business and get it out of their kitchen, and they had a shed that they wanted to expand, grow, and buy a piece of equipment that could expand their production so they could supply throughout the Northeast. And they needed financial support to do that. So it took a business model canvas with a P&L, cash flow, and they got financing. It may be physical, maybe the fixed assets. I'm working with somebody doing a fish market right now, and right now they're doing an assessment of the equipment that they need so they know what size retail location they need. So they're looking at location and equipment and looking at fixed assets, or maybe intellectual property. One of my cohorts was working with a lady the other day that needed trademarking for her product. So they went to the Northeast University that has a trademark department that offers free counseling. So you want to think about the resources you need in order to make this model work. Well, the resources that Waze needs is software, algorithms, developers, maps, IT infrastructure, and mind share. Now, when we've looked at the upper part, it's now time to look at the finances. And what we have to do is ask ourselves, what are the most important costs related to, one, launching the business, and two, operating the business? When we do that, then what we're able to do is look at our fixed costs. What does it take to turn on the lights? What are our variable? What are those costs that will vary with the amount of volume that we produce? Can we get economies of scale? We were in the personal service business. There was no economies of scale. And if you can't do that, how can you develop economies of scale or scope? When you look at your costs, you want to look at what are the must costs, because when you launch, you want to have the absolute minimum expenses that you have to have in order to start the business. Because cash is absolutely the most important issue. Most businesses that fail because they run out of cash. They have not estimated how much cash they need in order to function over the first 12 months. And I have to tell you, and I don't want my accountant to hear this, but for almost 30 years, we managed our business based on cash. We did a P&L, but we managed it on what's owed to us and what do we owe? How much is in the bank every day? When I go in the bank today, they ask me, do you want your balance? I said, no, I look every morning. It's a habit. Cash is king and queen and prince and princess. It's everything. And I have to tell you, about the middle of the life of our business, we almost ran out of cash. We made a poor decision because we supported a client in an area that we were not fully prepared to do. We survived. So you need to make sure that you understand the cash flow of your business. And as I showed you on the seed template, there's a template for cash flow. So if you look at Waze, the R&D software, their IT infrastructure, their maps, the cost of selling to their advertisers. And lastly, revenue. Most businesses don't think in terms of revenue streams. They just look at how much money is coming in. You need to look at the revenue streams of your business. Where are the funds coming from, and are there multiple sources of funds? Our revenue streams were personal training, measurement, products. So what we did was we looked at each one of those and broke them down to determine which revenue streams generated the highest gross profit margin to focus on them. And that we could move from revenue stream to revenue stream depending on our workload. So how much does your business earn from each of your customer segment? Some people look at their highest revenue customers as the most important, but are they your most profitable? Sometimes the people that generate the largest volume for you are not your most profitable. And What value are your customers willing to pay? What are they paying based on an auction between you and your competitors, or are they actually buying based on the value you're offering? And how do they pay? What we found is the smaller the company, the better the pay. The larger the company, the worse they paid. So we had to make sure that we had a balance so our cash flow worked. And when we look at our customers, are they one and done? Are they recurring? How many customers do we need in order to make it work? I asked my dental consulting client the other day is how many assignments does she need in the course of a month in order to generate enough revenue to make a profit? And at our next meeting, she is going to have that answer, hopefully. So what you want to do is think in terms of your customers and the tactics that will work for them. Some customers require you to offer them special rebates or discounts in order to get their business. Some of them don't, and you won't do that. So remember, cash flow, positive cash flow is critical. So when you think about your value propositions, do they align with your revenue streams? And these are all questions that you can answer in this one-page document. Well, Waze does advertising by roadside businesses and pay-per impression and real-time marketing. So what you want to do is think in terms of what are your revenue streams. Now, the one area that the business model canvas does not address, and that is competition. So if I could redo it, I would add a 10th block. Who are they? Because we all have competition, and sometimes our competition is the buyer. They can say no. Have you ever stood in front in a line at a retail store and the person in front of you was looking at something they thought they'd buy and decide not to and put it down? They're your competition if you are the producer of that product. Sometimes your competition is the buyer itself. Sometimes your competition is somebody down the street that they're already using. And you need to figure out why they're using them. So understanding where they are, where they're located, what they're offering, and what's the focus of their offer. Because positioning is a critical part of marketing. How are you going to position yourself in the mind of a buyer so they see no suitable substitute? What's your niche? When we used to say we're in the trade show and event in business, and our specialty is training and measurement, people would say, wow, what a neat niche. And it was. We didn't have a lot of competitors. And you had to have a broad base of understanding of the industry in order to be effective in it. Now, you also want to look at the data side of it. How are they pricing? Are they fixed price? Are they project price? Are they priced by the hour? What are they offering? When we offered audits, and the audits were always priced low so people would take them because that became their entry point to training and measurement. We talked about differentiators. Look at their size. Maybe they're a mega landscaper and your advantage is you're small and customized. Are they profitable? How do they go to market? Where do they advertise? Where do they promote themselves? Were they at the Home and Garden Show in Hyannis last weekend promoting themselves? And what are some of the buying considerations? Reliability, stability, appearance, brand image. They have a neat logo that people can glom onto. I was working with a tree company, and their brand was Eager Beaver. I mean, you knew exactly what they did. They were eager to take your trees down. So you need to look at all of these elements when you think about your business model canvas. Now, the one way of looking at the business model canvas is looking at it in a little more advanced way. And Merrimack Valley did a program a couple of months ago, and I borrowed this from them. I have their sourcing up at the front. But when you look at the model and take the 9 blocks, you can look at business infrastructure, which is your partners, activities, and resources, the business value, which is the cost and revenue, the customer value, which is the value proposition, and the customer infrastructure, which is your customers, your customer relationships, and your channels. So when you look at that, you can develop your strategies based upon business infrastructure, business value, customer value, and customer infrastructure in a way that allows you to think more strategically. Now, the business model canvas is a tactical program, but the next step is to look at it strategically. I'd like to close with one of Winston Churchill's most famous sayings. They who fail to plan, plan to fail. It doesn't take a lot of energy to utilize the business model canvas. It takes a lot of energy not to use it, because you will spin your wheels forever trying to get your business going. Because what this does is allows you to focus who you are, where you want to go, and how you want to get there. It's an easy tool. Now, those of you who have to do a traditional business plan, I've added in the appendix a detailed listing of everything you need to do, but I'm not going to do that today. If you want it, just let us know and we'll be glad to send it to you.
Well, actually, Mark, what I'm going to do is when I send the link to the recording, I will send that appendix.
Great.
So that everybody who registered for today's webinar will in fact receive it. And if
Good.
you, when you go to look at the recording through the link, when that takes place, you will see alongside of it the slides that Mark was speaking to as you hear the recording.
Okay, any questions?
I am not seeing any further questions or information in the chat other than expressions of gratitude. With that, I will thank everybody for their participation. Mark, as always, thank you very much. We both are always ready to respond if people have any questions that they would like to pose. My email address is jim.dannhauser, that's DANNHAUSER, @scorevolunteer.org. And you'll see that in the email that I send out, because that will be coming from that account. So if you'd like to follow up with any questions, please feel free to email me. And if there are those questions, I will make sure to get them to Mark as appropriate. So thanks everybody for your attention. Mark, thanks as always for your time, and we will catch everybody at the next one.
Great.
Thank you.